Your next deal is your next one is acquiring your next few deals, learning from the mistakes. We started implementing that buy right, the manage right, and the finance right. And what we mean by that is, multifamily is a three-legged stool. If you're buying the asset right and you're getting proper financing, well, you better make sure that you're managing that asset, and you don't have to manage it yourself. Somebody has to be managing it. That's why the wheel of the wheelbarrow is in constant motion, and that's the manage right. I remember in our second deal, we closed it in July. It was like 4 months after we closing our first deal. It was a 36 units. So we had 25 units. The next deal came at 36 units. And the aha moments for that one was we need to find a partner. Jake and I and my brother Mark had bought the first one. The second one, we brought on a partner who had a significantly strong balance sheet. And he said, you know what? I'm sick of buying single families up here in the Northeast. They don't make sense. Let's try this. So for us, that second deal was really, really eye opener for us. We had resident managers on there, which that was a nightmare. But what had happened was it gave us the proof of concept. Now we've got 60 units. Jake is starting to continue to manage these two assets. It's giving him enough runway where, you know what, another deal, guys, we're going to be able to hire a full-time leasing agent, full-time property manager. We're going to be able to quit our job. He's going to be able to quit his job. So that next deal, it came quick for us. Some people may take a little bit longer, but for us, we were really dialed in. We had a great relationship with the broker from the first deal. Remember that? He brought us the second deal and the third deal and the fourth deal. So that relationship was key for us. We liked him, he liked us, and it just worked really, really well. I'm going to dive into these three pillars of real estate. But Josh, do you want to add anything to that on your second deal? Because I know when you acquired your first deal with us, it must have been great. But how did that second deal go for you?
Well, Gino, real quick, we have a question from Charles. So he says,
Sure.
given your struggles on your early deals, did your mentors let you down?
My mentors did not let me down. I actually had it's not their fault. You can't go over every scenario. I remember on my third deal, it was a very big deal, right? It was I was going through it, Charles, and I had a gentleman named Craig Haskell from Value Hound who unfortunately passed away a couple months ago, and he was a great guy. And I remember going through that deal, getting on the call with him and asking him, Craig, I need this due diligence doc. You have it. Craig, I need this takeover checklist. You have it. Craig, how does this financing look? And for me, that mentorship really helped me and made me look credible in front of the brokers because I was able to have real time. And that's what I tell all of our students when they're going through a deal. First of all, don't hoard any coaching calls. You need to get on and do the work on the front end because everyone's going to say, oh, you know what? I'll get on with a mentor when I find a deal. That is the worst thing that you could possibly do because you're not even going to know what a deal looks like. So you need to do the work on the front end. But as you're going through the deals, it's like, wow, you know what? I can get on with somebody who's done it before, who's been through this process. And, Craig really on that third deal helped me out a lot. And as far as the first two deals, nothing goes smoothly. Looking back at it, they've been fantastic deals. We've been able to refinance both of them a couple of times. I pulled out probably over $600,000 just on those first two deals. So for me, it's always a learning process. I'm a slow learner. I loved working on with Jake on the first two. We actually property managed them ourselves. Probably might have been better getting third party, but I think we just love the property management. We wanted to learn. We wanted to get into the, as they say, into the weeds with it. It was a great learning process. And then for us, we just continued to self-manage our properties. Now, when you're managing and you're starting out, you have to ask yourself, do you want to be able to scale a portfolio into thousands and thousands of units, or do you want to have that vertical integration, that control? Because you really can't have both. Because when you're vertically integrated like us, you can continue to grow, but you can't continue to add on assets, as I'll talk about a little bit later, because you continue to add on, payroll and more employees. Whereas third-party property management, that's being subbed out. So think about that, everybody on the call. What is your exit plan? What are you looking to do as far as the exit plan is? For us, we like to have that control. We're adding on as many units as we can every year, but it's scalable for us. Instead of going out there and going, you know what, I'm going to put another 300 units next month because that might tax the system. And as for us, also when we're buying properties, we can only buy one or two, value adds, heavy lifts per year because we have a CapEx crew and we can't stress them out too much. So it's also helping out and making us reframe our buy right criteria. Josh, does that make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, Gino, before we move on, we have another question. I want to ask you a couple questions that are going to hammer home Charles' point. So, Gino, on that first deal, you had some owner financing. What was the total cash invested on that 25 unit to close?
Sure. It was a $600,000. Actually, let me start. It was a $750,000 ask We offered $600,000, and they said, you know what, we'll take that, but you know what, we'll give you owner financing. So it was a $600,000 purchase price. We got 10% owner financing. We had to come up with 10% down payment, and it was 80% bank financing. So we came up with $60,000 plus another $15,000 or $18,000 in closing costs. So we came up with a total of about $80,000. Now, what we should have done if we were savvy enough on the first one, and this is to Charles's point, we didn't really know about, oh wow, there's a couple of roofs that should be changed, replaced. They replaced one or two of them. You know what? There's some real damage in some other areas that they should have fixed. We didn't know that, so we could have probably gotten another $25,000 or $50,000 off the price, because that's where the market was. It's not where it is now. It was more of a buyer's market. Now it's more of a seller's market. So you need to know that, and you can't strong arm sellers on price. An example: we're selling a property right now. We've been through the due diligence phase. We've been through all this. We're ready to close in 2 weeks. And now the sellers come back and they want to retrade. They want $6,000 off to cut some trees. They want some other money off some other silly stuff. Both of the brokers are getting really annoyed and upset at the sellers. They're not getting, I'm sorry, at the buyers, not at us. So be careful what part of the cycle you're in. We should have actually gotten some more money, but it's okay that we didn't. That's a learning lesson that we took on into the third and fourth and fifth deals, saying, you know what, we're going to do our due diligence. Anything that looks like an item that can be retraded, whether it's a roof, like I said, you're doing an inspection, you don't see what the quality of the condition of the roof is in only until the inspection is over. You can't ask for repairs to the driveway, because during due diligence, you're walking the driveway. That should be reflected upon the price. So it's really important that you do that.
Okay, so Gino, let's say you're in that deal for 80,000, and I know personally that 25 unit is cash flowing net draw 6,000 a month. How much have you refied out of that deal total cash?
So, yeah, I'll give you the timeline for that, because it doesn't happen overnight. Everybody, multifamily is a long game, but what a great long game it is. We refied the property in December of 2015. It took a little over 2 years to refi the property, because it was our very first one. A lot of learning lessons. We had to turn every single unit practically, because it was weekly renters. We had to restabilize the whole entire tenant base. We actually had to get all the utilities out of our names and start the tenants doing that. So on the first property, it took us a little bit longer to do that. But after that, in December of 2015, we were able to refinance out $164,000 out of that property. So we put in 75, right around there, and we're able to refinance over $164,000. And the beautiful thing about it is, on the front end, we got crappy financing. The financing was a 20-year amortization. We had a 6% interest rate on that, which was really, really high, but we didn't know what we were doing, right? And it was a 5-year term. The reason why we got that is because the bank allowed us to owner finance. But when we refied, the numbers were fantastic. We pushed it to a 25-year amortization. We got the rate down to a 4.29% interest rate, and we got a 7-year term on it. So what happened was, we put more debt on the property, but remember, the net operating income increased. So we're able to actually, take on more debt, but not even that. The payment stayed practically the same, because we got so much better terms on it. So we're extracting all that money out of that $164,000. I remember putting in an additional $20,000 or $25,000 into the property for more capex. We fixed a couple of roofs. We did some decks on the property. So that refi is going to take a little while, especially when you're new, but it does work. You need to know when to do it in what part of the cycle. But also for us, what was amazing was, it was part of the process, part of the system. And then the second property, we refied the second property that we bought 3 months after the first. We refied it probably 4 or 5 months after the first one. It was a really much quicker process. I'm just trying to think through what other numbers would be relevant to that. So pulling that money out, spending on CapEx, taking that refi money, which is basically a loan to you. You're not paying any taxes. You're using the tax code, and you're taking that money, $140,000, and rolling that into the next deal. Josh, does that make sense?
Yeah, so to hammer home Charles' point, Charles, look, you're going to make mistakes. The point of getting a mentor is to limit that downside risk and make sure it is a good deal, right? So as you can see, the deal turned out okay, even though he did. And then as you know better, you do better. Now, Gino, real quick, I don't want to get too far off. We have another question from Jim. Who was your other mentor? And then what education platforms are you doing personally? And then who are your mentors?
So this sounds crazy, but I was Jake's mentor in the beginning, believe it or not. And then as a partner, he became my mentor as far as scaling businesses and doing all this work. I had a mentor. His name is Mike, partner. He's a partner of mine. At the restaurant, he would come in as a customer, and I was sitting there. This is why everyone needs to have this massive education and be prepared, because you never know who's going to walk through that door. I'm sitting down. I remember it was a tired. It was about 4 o'clock, right before dinner time, and Mike walks in, looking sharp. I love the shoes, like the BMW 750 he was driving. He sits down next to me, and we're friends. He starts talking, but I never knew what Mike did. Find out that he's a hedge fund commodity trader, and he starts talking about China to me and gold and oil, and I just start talking to him. Like in an educated fashion. I knew all about I know all about the stock market, and he looks at me. He goes, "How do you know all that?" I'm like, "I'm investing in real estate." And he's like, "Really?" He goes, "I'm buying houses here for $2 million, and they give me $10,000 a month in rent." I'm like, "Mike, let's, if you wanted to know what I'm doing, let's find out." So from that point on, he was hooked. I mean, and he's been my partner constantly. But what I love about Mike, he's got that business mindset. He's just become the CEO of Louis Dreyfus. He's just an amazing intellect. He's helped me as far as looking at these assets as not just actual assets, but actual mini businesses. And it's all about the numbers in any business. Don't let anyone kid you. You need to know the numbers, what the income line items are, what the expenses are, and NOI. And then it comes down to the financing aspect of it, working on the financing, and then, the negotiation aspect. I guess my other mentor, to be honest with you, this might sound a little corny, but it's my mom. I mean, my mom was an immigrant, my dad, both my parents, but specifically my mom. They came from Italy. They didn't even speak the language. They opened up a successful business. She bought a few investment properties. And from there, I always looked to her to say, wow, mom, if you can do it and you had nothing to start with, and I can't do it, that makes me a loser. So I have to perform, because if you had all those disadvantages going on and you're giving me all of these benefits and all these advantages, I need to make it happen. So for me, she's one of my biggest fans in the world. I love my mom. And then I guess ultimately it's the Jake and Gino community right now that we've created with all our coaches. I love our coaches, Bill Ham and Colin Schwartz and Chris Jackson. I look at them as sort of like a mastermind / mentor. I look at them, and every day when we have these on-site boot camps, I am constantly learning from them, because it's not a day goes by that you just pick up a book and you don't learn something. So being surrounded by that community has been really powerful for me.
Yeah. So Jim, let me dive into it a little bit more before we move on. So one of the more recent groups we've invested in for the business was a group called Petra Coaches, and they help us implement the Rockefeller habits, which is in the book Scaling Up. They do very well. They weren't cheap, I will tell you that. Jake Gino recently had a speaking coach that helped them as well. Now, me personally, for the last 4 years, not only having Jake and Gino as my mentor, but I also have a leadership coach through John Maxwell, and his name is Chris Robinson. And that's helped me develop into the person I am today.
And Josh, I guess the last one we can mention is Traction. We did some work with Traction, Gino Wickman's book. They had some coaching. We with them, we did our rock habits. We did level 10 coaching. We did our cadence of accountability. They helped us out a lot with that. So that's another book that I think everyone should check out, because it's a powerful book. When you're first starting out and you're starting to scale your business, you're like, I need some help here. I've never done this before. So really powerful.